Four powerful Western nations have just made a move that could reshape the Middle East and shake global politics to its core. Britain, Canada, Australia, and Portugal have all formally recognized a Palestinian state. It's a decision born out of frustration, wrapped in symbolism, and destined to trigger fury in Israel. The question now is whether this is the first real step toward peace, or the start of an even greater storm. In London, Prime Minister Keir Starmer stood before the cameras and delivered words no British leader had ever spoken. The United Kingdom now officially recognizes the state of Palestine. He framed the move as an urgent moral necessity, citing the catastrophic humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Starmer declared that the relentless bombardment, starvation, and devastation inflicted on Palestinians was intolerable, and that recognition was needed to revive the dream of a two-state solution. It was a historic break with decades of carefully balanced UK policy, one that had always deferred recognition until after a peace settlement. Now, Starmer has flipped that script, choosing recognition as a step toward peace rather than the reward at the end of it. Britain didn't act alone. On the very same day, Canada, Australia, and Portugal announced identical moves, a coordinated statement of intent sending a clear signal. Frustration in the West has reached a boiling point. For years, Israel could rely on these allies to hold the line, but the staggering death toll in Gaza, tens of thousands of civilians killed, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble, has shifted the ground beneath Israel's feet. The recognition aligns these nations with over 140 others who already back Palestinian statehood, and it puts pressure on France, Spain, and other European powers, who may soon follow suit. What began as a trickle is quickly becoming a wave. In Jerusalem, the response was nothing short of fury. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the decision a reward for terrorism, insisting no Palestinian state would ever rise west of the Jordan River. His message was blunt. After the October 7th Hamas attack that left 1,200 Israelis dead and hundreds taken hostage, recognizing Palestine is nothing less than legitimizing violence. Israeli officials warned of dire consequences. Some ministers called for annexing more territory in the West Bank in retaliation. For Israel, this wasn't just a diplomatic snub. It was a betrayal by nations they once counted as their closest friends. In Palestinian territories, the mood was entirely different. President Mahmoud Abbas hailed the recognition as a vital step toward living side by side with Israel in peace. Hamas too welcomed the decision, though they insisted it must be backed by real action to stop the war and prevent annexation of the West Bank. On the streets of Hebron and Ramallah, Palestinians celebrated, calling it an act of justice long overdue. For them, Britain's recognition was not just a headline, it was a chance to believe, even for a moment, that history might finally bend in their favor. But this move is bigger than Israel and Palestine. It reverberates through Washington, Brussels, and the wider Arab world. The United States, Israel's closest ally, has so far stayed silent, but Donald Trump has already made clear he opposes Palestinian recognition. If America refuses to shift, could we see a widening rift between Washington and its allies? Meanwhile, Arab nations are watching closely. Some see this as validation of their decades-long demands. Others fear it could inflame tensions further. The recognition has turned a long-frozen debate into a live geopolitical flashpoint, and the world is now bracing for what comes next. At home, the decision split opinion. On the streets of London, some praised Starmer for taking a moral stand, calling recognition the first step toward peace. Others condemned it as reckless, rewarding Hamas while hostages remain in captivity. Inside Westminster, the backlash was immediate. Tory MPs accused Starmer of endangering Britain's alliance with Israel, while Reform UK branded him dangerously naive. But Labour MPs, who had long demanded stronger action on Gaza, celebrated it as proof the party could lead with principle on the world stage. Keir Starmer's bold step doesn't come without danger. By recognizing Palestine, he has positioned Britain at the center of one of the world's most explosive disputes. Israel's fury is only the beginning. Washington remains hesitant, with Donald Trump openly hostile to the idea of Palestinian statehood. If Britain drifts too far from America's line, Starmer risks straining the most crucial alliance the UK still has. At home, the gamble is just as sharp. Starmer has appeased sections of Labour who demanded action over Gaza, but critics warn he has now opened himself to accusations of rewarding Hamas. Families of Israeli hostages say the decision is reckless, while Tory and Reform MPs are already painting him as dangerously naive. In one move, Starmer has gained moral credibility abroad, but also handed his enemies in Westminster a weapon to wield against him. Britain, Canada, Australia, and Portugal have redrawn the diplomatic map with one announcement, and Israel's furious response shows just how high the stakes are. For Palestinians, it is a long-awaited recognition of their struggle. For Israelis, it is a bitter betrayal at a time of war. And for Keir Starmer, it is a gamble that could define his premiership, testing both his moral authority and his political survival.